Out to our Middle East correspondent, Zach Anders, who's been tracking today's developments from Tel Aviv. Zach, how are you?
Hi, Rob. The big question tonight, could Damascus be the next domino to fall Bashar al-Assad's regime? His last stand potentially could be just hours away, as there is no reports of opposition, any resistance taking place in the capital city as the rebels have begun making their advance inside the southern suburbs. Now, these are scenes less than 5 miles from the city center as the first suburb of Damascus fell just hours ago. Syrians who were still living under the regime when they woke up this morning took to the streets as the rebels rolled in and tore down this bust of former Syrian President Hafez al-Assad, Bashar's father. These rebels have faced little to no resistance today as they enter the Syrian capital city from the south. Movement leaders state they're beginning an encirclement of Damascus. All of this is happening fast, and regime soldiers have been spotted fleeing or changing out of their uniforms in the streets. Multiple flights have been tracked leaving military airstrips near the city, flying east, some towards Iran and others into the Gulf. And in the east of the country, local Iraqi officials tell Reuters more than 2,000 regime soldiers have arrived at the border and surrendered their weapons and equipment to the Iraqis. Rob, we can't tell you tonight where Bashar al-Assad is. He's supposed to give some form of address, but that hasn't happened yet. What we can tell you is that those rebels are now less than 3 miles from the presidential palace inside that capital city. Rob?
A lot going on around the world today. Zach, thanks so much. And let's pivot back to Paris, where President-elect Trump wrapped up a meeting with the French President Macron and Ukrainian President Zelensky. So here to discuss is former Navy Pentagon staff retired U.S. Navy captain and senior research fellow at the Heritage Foundation, Brent Sadler. Also joining us is a distinguished university professor and an expert on foreign affairs at Touro University. He's also the author of that book, Saving Free Speech from Itself, Newsmax contributor Thane Rosenbaum. So, Captain, what did you make of the meeting with the three world leaders? Trump seems to be, flexing his diplomatic muscles. He's not even in the Oval Office yet.
No, I mean, it's very remarkable for a president-elect before an inauguration to have these many foreign leaders. This is not Macron's just the latest in a long line of them, currying favor, but also trying to get insight and to shape what President Trump plans to do on day one. I certainly have never seen anything like this, and I think it's a testament of how hollow the Biden administration's authority has been. And now there's no reason to continue engaging with it. And certainly the Biden team's not even trying. So that's one point. The other is there is some bad history with Macron. It's interesting to see the pages turned and that you got Zelensky there, that it's Ukraine that's actually forcing a change on behalf of Paris.
So it's so true. I mean, there's supposed to only be one president at a time, but our president is actually, bumping into walls and sleeping. So the rest of the world looks at the new guy coming in, who was the old guy. So Thane, let's head back to the Middle East. You got Syrian rebels, as we heard Zach talk about. They're taking over big pieces of the country. What happens if Assad, if he falls, if this regime collapses?
Rob, first of all, there's no good answer here because Assad falling does not present us with an opportunity for friends in Syria. All three of the different Islamist insurgent groups that are encircling Damascus, they're Islamists. They may not be ISIS, but they're ISIS-esque or cousins of ISIS. They're not friends of the West or democracy or Israel. And Assad, ran out of friends. Before, during the civil war, he could rely on Iran and Russia as his patrons. But Iran and Russia are at war. Iran's proxies are in tatters, largely because of Israel. Hezbollah was helping to fight the civil war on behalf of Assad. The Iranians are now afraid, because Israel took out their air defense systems. They don't want to get involved. And Russia is in Ukraine. So this was inevitably going to happen. The only question I had was whether the Kurds have a role here to play, because the Kurds are our friends, and we did help them fight Assad. There's just not enough of them. But if they could have some kind of meaningful role in Syria, that would stabilize, I think, at least Syria in terms of the Middle East.
Let's go now to, the ceasefire. Brent, you got Israel and Hezbollah, right? They've got a ceasefire right now, but it's not really lasting. You got two sides firing on each other, both sides claiming violations. Does this last until the 60-day agreed, mark, or what?
Well, I mean, it is deeply connected to what is happening in Syria right now, and it all goes back to Tehran. So it's no surprise that the Iranians want Hezbollah to, no matter what happens, to continue to adhere to, at least in word, if not deed, this ceasefire, because they've got too many things going on, and they're all going against them in Syria, to Iraq, and certainly with the defeats they've suffered at the hands of Israel in the last several months.
Thane, the hostages, they're still there, obviously. They've been forgotten for so long, unfortunately. But Donald Trump, again, acting as if he's already in office and the world listening, he put out a Truth Social basically saying to Hamas, there's going to be hell to play if these hostages are not released before I become president. What did you make of that? And do you think they listen to him, or what happens between now and then?
Rob, I think it's related to the first part of this segment of the Notre Dame visit. For all the rap about Donald Trump not being presidential, are you kidding? He looks really presidential now. He's not even the president now. And everyone is drawn to American strength, not weakness. Under Obama and Biden, the United States was constantly, not the leader of the free world. They were constantly feeling guilty and racists and colonialists and begging the world for their apology. Donald Trump is not asking for an apology. He's saying, I'm in control. I'm here, and all hell will be paid unless the hostages are returned. And I actually think he's going to follow up. And I think the Middle East needs to be prepared that he's not just talking trash. He's saying Americans have been held hostage, Americans have been killed, and this is a serious thing. The Biden administration was apologizing the whole time and begging Dearborn, Michigan, not to be upset with him, instead of acting like an actual leader of the free world and say, I want my Americans back tomorrow, and I want them in a limousine being driven back. That's what was required, and that's what we did not get. And now that's what we're seeing with those recent words by Trump.
Yeah, at some point we can have the fierce debate, who is the weakest U.S. president in modern history, Joe Biden or Jimmy Carter, because it's so eerily similar. Thane Rosenbaum and Brent Sadler, appreciate you guys coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.